It's heavy, but if you can grab it from the middle, so I grab the rack right about here, or like the king rack's really nice because it's got a lot of handholds on it for vertical holding. But if you take it in the center, doing it in an enclosed environment, you know, I can lift this trike pretty solidly vertically once I have it above my head, and then I can kind of like slide it in. But, well, yeah. But that went better than I had hoped. Because I was a little nervous. Okay. I think in scenarios, like I think of everything that could go wrong, and there was a lot of things that went through my mind in that few seconds. Coulda. Okay. So I'm down for 2 days. So like I'm doing the first seminar today, and I'm doing the first seminar tomorrow. So when Mark from Trike called me, he was like, TerraCycle. He said that international adventure was like the subheading, but I didn't want to do the same speech today as I do tomorrow. So today I was going to talk about logistics, like getting things from A to B. And where's my sheet? Yeah. So like international travel logistics. Like that can be anything from the flight to the ferry ride, to the train ride, to using your buddies to get you around, or bus rides. So I figure we can talk about that. That can encompass a lot of different things. A lot of times when you're worried about traveling overseas with your trike or your bike and you're wanted to take a long tour like that, logistics is one of the most fearful things that you're going to run into. Like, how am I going to get my stuff there? How am I going to be able to keep it outside the hotel at night? What am I going to do with it when I need to travel, say, a distance and it's not going to be cycling? Because sometimes you're not going to be riding over a body of water, you know, or this and that. So I have, if you look at my ride map that I've done so far, you can see there's a lot of lines without little play areas. Like this section here was a flight, this gray line. These blue lines here are all ferry rides. So there was a lot of ferry rides in Japan and Korea. So like, for example, I took a ferry from Lianyungang, China. This is the long ferry. This was like overnight ferry, like over 24 hours almost. And then across Korea, I took a ferry to Jeju, then I took a ferry to Osaka, rode across, and then took a ferry up to Maizuru, and then rode all around. I even took a little ferry up here. Up here is actually, if you haven't seen my videos, that's a fun video because this island here is called Rishiri, and this point up here is the closest point that Japan goes to Russia. So this is like Russia, and very, very cold. Every house in Wakanai up here, the roofs are not like what we normally see. You can't have a flat roof because the snow is like, you know, over your head in the wintertime. So everything has that metal corrugated on a slant, you know. You seen those videos of the guys that clean off the roofs and it's like this big long comes off the roof. It's that area. Anyway, so Rishiri is a volcanic island. It's called Rishiri Fuji because it's like a sister volcano to Mount Fuji, you know, like the mountain near Tokyo, like the picturesque. Everybody, when you think of Japan, it's that.
What time of the year were you there?
I was there in the spring, which is a great time. I was there in the late spring. So, like for example, if you're going to travel to Hokkaido, so Japan's kind of broken into a bunch of parts. So you have Okinawa here. Then you have this Fukuoka here, and then the mainland land of Honshu. There's obviously some pieces here and here. Actually, this one right here is super cool. There's a series of bridges that go across. I'm giving you guys recommendations. If you want to see any of this, you can go to jayoe.com, Jayoe, and you can see this map, and you can pull up. But this series of islands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you're at this larger landmass. This has some of the most picturesque, beautiful bridges, and there is a dedicated bike path that runs across all of these. It is probably one of my favorite rides, and you can do it in a day. It's about 80 kilometers or so, and you can ride from one to the other. And it's like each bridge is, because each island is very vertical, they're not like flat islands, they're like mountainous sort of islands. So you have to cycle up these tubes, you know, these roundabouts to get to the bridge, and then the bridge goes across, and then you take the roundabout down and ride around the island, and then up and over, and it's quite amazing. It has nothing to do with the topic I wanted to discuss, but you're gonna get a lot of this if you're coming to one of my presentations. Anyways, Rishiri Fuji up there. I've taken ferry rides, bus rides, train rides, and plane rides. But first, the plane, the most unnerving part of traveling with your trike. So I've done everything from flying with basically a fully assembled trike, just kind of folded over. I flew with that from Okinawa to Taipei, and I was able to finagle them to put it on the plane for free, actually. Peach Airlines. Each airline is different. You got to do your research before you go and travel. So research is number one, right? So if you're going to travel international distance from America to somewhere else, it's very feasible, but you just got to do your research. In my experience, Air Canada is the best with regards to the factors that you need to take into consideration when you're flying internationally. Is you got to take into consideration the fee, the fee that they're going to charge. Sometimes it's zero. As long as you're under a certain weight, a bicycle is free. And that bicycle weighs more than, say, your luggage in some cases, and it's still free because it's a bicycle. There's height, weight, and depth restrictions, and then so weight, size, and how much it costs. Now, Air Canada had like a flat $50 fee as long as you could keep it in a certain dimension, and the dimension was larger than, say, a large mountain bike box. So you had it was like 60 inches long, and then it was like 30, almost 25 inches wide. So it was a big, you could have like a large size. I was able to break this trike down and fit it into their standard box that fit in that $50 realm. And then I was able to put the extra, because you could put the extra into your luggage, right? So if you're flying internationally, you're going to get luggage allowance, and you utilize that luggage allowance as much as possible. You weave things together. You try to break down as much as you can. A lot of people ask me about like how to ship their trike, and the first thing that I tell them is they should go to their garage and take it apart and put it back together 2 or 3 times, because you don't want to do it at the airport, and you want to be able to get it down to as small a size as possible. And when you're comfortable at home, even in your den, as long as you keep track of all the little bits and bobs, you'd be pretty surprised at how far you can break it down if you're comfortable with breaking down your bike. So like, for example, this king rack, which looks obnoxiously large, once you take this middle section out, which is just a few screws, and pop it off of the frame, this piece is flat, this piece is flat, and then these pieces just lay flat. So pretty much, this is one of the smallest size things that you can get. If you take the seat off, you can weave your frame and other things in between the seat. The seat is probably, unless you have a Scorpion these days, or a HP, because HP actually has the bottom part of the seat now articulates. I don't know if it comes off though. Does anybody have a HP or a Scorpion? Do you know if the bottom part of the seat comes off? If it came off, that would be great. But you lay it flat. This one actually has a contoured shape to it, and I'm able to like weave in the frame into it. You remove the front boom. Sometimes you have electronics in the front boom, but they're just a little connector, electrical connector. Once you pop that off, you pop off your pedals, because they're kind of an odd, anything that's in a right angle, you want to sort of get rid of if possible. So if you have anything at a right angle, I don't really touch much with the suspension, but everything that's upright, everything with your handlebars can come down, pop off. The fenders, of course, the wheels and the tires, oftentimes can be a little bit difficult, especially if you have 3 26-inch ones, you know. But your fenders and everything, I've been able to break this thing down pretty small. Now, I have a video here that I made when I was...
So check this out. This is what is called extreme folding or ultra folding.
So this is this trike.
This is the frame all the way long.
So you can oftentimes you can fold over the rear fork, and in this case, AZUB has extreme folding, so you can kind of fold that down as well, which is pretty nice. This is actually at AZUB. So I built the trike, and I was getting it ready to pack to send back to me. And that's Hansa's voice in the background.
Look at how small that thing is. That's a Ti-Fly X. That's incredible. I don't know if you guys can appreciate this, but this is really, really, really tiny.
Yeah. So, I mean, now your trikes are different, especially if you're non-folding and things like that. I'm just giving you the example of my trike. But I did, before this, I had a Scorpion 20FS, and that folded down pretty small as well. I think you'd be pretty surprised at how small it can go. And even if you can't break it down and it doesn't fold over, oftentimes if you can take the front boom off, the length from front to back still can fit inside of a standard bike box, even on a diagonal. So don't be too afraid of shipping that. And oftentimes, even if you can stay within some oversized parameters, you can still get it on the plane and get it to where you can ride it.
How do you get the boxes beforehand so you can have an idea of what you need to break down?
You can bastard.
Go to the airport and say, I want a bike box or something? Or?
No, you go to your local bike dealer.
Oh.
Go to your local bike store. You know, you ask them, say, this is what I'm doing. Do you have an extra box? And they will always, you know, they're always full of boxes. Because oftentimes a real bike shop's just selling the bikes on the bike floor, and they have tons of boxes sitting around. They're more than happy to. Sometimes they'll pay. I paid $15 for a bike box. I think in Rome, when I left Rome, Italy, I had to get a bike dealer to help me out. And that's the other thing. You want to pack it up to bring it home too. Don't be afraid. When you're in the weird parts of the world, there's always going to be a bike shop, and those people are oftentimes some of your biggest like friends and proponents. You know, they're going to help you because that's what they do. They sell bikes. So walk up to a bike shop, don't be nervous, and say, hey, I got to take this back. You know, is there any way that you can help me out? When I got to Italy and Rome, which is like crazy busy, there's like people everywhere. One hint, a busy city sometimes is the best place to cycle, because once the cars are all backed up, you can just weave around. You're not worried about somebody hitting you because they're not getting anywhere. You know what I mean? And I traveled all the way across Rome in half the time it took to drive, you know, because I was going down cobblestone roads and weaving in between cars and got around. But when I got there, I called a bunch of bike shops and I said, I'm going to the airport, and oftentimes they can even help you with logistics, get a bus to, you know, take you to the airport and whatnot. And I was able to just sit back there. The other thing is, and disassemble my trike. He gave me an Allen key, and bikes are a lot easier to take apart than you think. Trust me, I've taken this apart and put it back together a dozen times. And I also did that with the HP Velotechnik Scorpion. You know, the Scorpion's suspension is a little bit more aggressive than this one as far as moving parts and stuff. But as long as you don't touch that, you're okay. But the other thing that you can do is you can connect two bike boxes together by slicing the cardboard in a certain way that they kind of like a shoebox. You know, one side fits into the other side. You just gotta like tape it up and have tape. Okay, the other thing. Have tape ready at the airport. Even if you just throw it away after you get on the plane. Have a roll of very strong, clear tape, packing tape, because if customs does want to take a look inside, they're most likely they're not gonna disassemble your whole thing, but they're gonna want to open it up and take a look inside, make sure that you're not, you know, hauling, you know, 20 pounds of cocaine in there. You only make that mistake once, you know. But you know, be ready to repack if that's the case. And also be ready to understand what things are heavy, because sometimes you might want to take out something that's heavy and put it in your backpack because their scales are getting a different reading than what you read at the house. So, yeah, packing up your trike, as far as logistics goes, is some of the most nerve-wracking things that you can do. Who here has traveled international with their trike? Anybody? Just me. And you might be like, well, there's services that can do that too, like bike flights. You know, bike flights won't touch trikes. So I had contacted them and I tried to get them on board, and they were afraid of the logistical challenges with regards to trikes. They had bikes down pat, right? They're really, really comfortable with helping people get their bikes and two-wheeled. Like you might be able to get like a two-wheeled, even like a tandem situation sent with that. But when you start getting that dimension of the trike that goes this way, they have some nervousness there. But anyways, just stuff to think about. When you pack up your trike and you're ready to go, you know, anytime. This is just a international travel tip. Just get there early enough that you can be first in line, that you can have them answering your questions, that you can solve problems that will eventually get there. And when I say early, go there an hour earlier than the 2 hours recommended by an international flight. You're going to save yourself time down the road and stress, especially because you don't want to be there last minute with trying to solve some problems, because there are always going to be problems, you know. And that's another thing. Go with the flow. There's always going to be problems. But trust me, when you're in like Rome, or you're riding by the Tower of Pisa, or you're at an Indonesian volcano and you're riding your own ride, there's nothing better than that. You know, there's nothing better than being as comfortable as you can be, because you know and at that point in time, you know every screw, every nut, every part of your trike, and you're riding with it. Another thing, when you arrive at your destination, I typically don't have somebody to pick me up, right? I'm just a solo cyclist, and so I'll arrive at a destination, I'll put the trike together, and I'll ride out of the airport. You got to make sure that you can ride out of airports, right? Sometimes you cannot ride out of an airport because there's a bus that will transport you out of that area so that you can ride. I think it was Kuala Lumpur was one where I got to, and you couldn't. I had assembled the trike and I drove right to the area where the buses come and everything, and there was like one narrow road where all of the bus traffic left the airport to get to the city, and I was like, oh, that's there's no room for me here, you know. And I ended up having to disassemble my trike again, and so that I could put it under a bus, and it was just a shuttle bus just to get out of the airport, and then I was able to be dropped off. So just note that too. Don't be too hasty to like me, get your trike back in one piece. Keep it in the multiple pieces, because that box is going to fit under the bus a lot easier than, say, you know, your fully assembled trike. Not to say that my trike has not been fully assembled strapped to the top of a bus. I was traveling from Vientiane, the capital city of Laos. Was it Laos? Yeah, Laos. And I was going into Vietnam, and my friend had come with me. We were going to explore the largest cave system in the world in Vietnam, Son Doong Cave. And we didn't have enough time to ride, so we had to take a bus. Sometimes time, logistics-wise, won't allow you to cycle as far as you want, so we ended up getting one of these small buses, and we actually strapped the trike fully assembled on the top of a little bus, and that bus ended up taking us where we needed to go. And it was, you know, it was a little nerve-wracking, because I would see a tree branch. I'll be like, I hope that goes over the trike, you know. But in Laos, it's a lot of like there's areas of Laos. You think of Laos as like a jungle, and it is, a lot of it is a jungle. But there's a lot of like dry areas of Laos where there wasn't a lot of trees that were going to rip my trike off the top of the bus, which was nice. Okay, so you've arrived to your destination. You've flown. You've kind of accomplished that goal, which is a little bit scary, but not, you know, as long as you take those steps. Oh, one more thing. So when I was researching what to talk about today, I started using a new tool that I've been using a lot lately, is ChatGPT. Who here has used ChatGPT? Anybody?
My son told me about it.
Okay. It's awesome. Like, if you're looking for information, especially like if you're asking it like sort of opinionative questions, sometimes the data can be a little bit off and it's scrubbing some data, the databases that are a little old. But like if you're asking for like size dimensions, how much a fee for bike shipping is, whether it's sea freight or air freight or whatever, you're asking it. Like, because when I originally started traveling, it was like, to find the exact bike parameters for a certain airline, sometimes you had to like dig deep into the website. It was a little difficult to find. But I simply, for this thing, I was like, give me the 10 best, and you got to quantify what is best, like the lowest fee, bike fees and their dimensions and their restrictions and their parameters and everything. And that thing just went to work and gave me, the 20 top airlines. So if you're looking for, if that's one of your fears is like, how am I going to, I don't even know. ChatGPT can help a lot. And for those of you that don't know what ChatGPT, it's like an AI run like messenger. And basically you're talking to an AI service and you're asking it to give you information, and it's free to a certain level. So you can download it on your computer and you can ask it a question, and it can do a lot of research for you that when you're planning a trip or something, research is a really important part of it, and that can help you do that. Okay, so back to that. So I did a lot of ferry rides. So let's see here. So I did a lot of ferry rides. Now, ferry rides can be daunting if you've never done them before. I know my first ferry ride out of China across to Korea was was a scary situation. I have a picture of the ferry actually that I took from there, and let's see here. Yeah, this is a ferry that I took from Mekong Delta, like Mekong in Vietnam, and I rode into Cambodia, and they basically strapped my trike onto a small skiff. And I would sit like in this section here, and I would stare at my trike. It looked like it gave me the impression my trike was like riding down the river, which was kind of interesting. Here's a video of me riding out to a ferry. Where was this? I think this was Taiwan. Sometimes you can ride your trike right to the ferry and then load it on, like in this case. Let's see here. Yeah, it was. And then sometimes the ferries are larger, like this one, where you can just put it on there. This was Thailand. I was going from island to island in Thailand, and I mean ferries. I've ridden a lot of different ferries. This is the ferry that I rode. This is the ferry I took quite a lot. This size ferry from China to Korea. I've taken ferries like this all around Korea to Japan, all around Japan, all around Southeast Asia. These are more of like your overnight ferries. Very similar to flying a plane. You go on a service website and you buy a ticket. Oftentimes they have a box to check that says you're going to be bringing a bike. Normally they don't charge more for, say, a bike, because you can just ride it right on and you just tuck it somewhere. They've got this one you loaded from the side. So you actually pulled up into the port and you drove onto the ferry and you put it somewhere underneath. And you have a bunk on your, you either pay for a bunk, or in Korea, everybody slept in a communal area. So there was all these like sort of tatami. Tatami is like the bamboo mats that people sleep on in Asia, and you'd lay on a tatami mat next to like 100 other people, and you'd all be sitting there. One of the recommendations I would say, if you're ever going to travel, ferry rides are awesome. Ferry rides are great because they give you like a forced rest day. Sometimes you're over excited and you're riding every day and you're riding and you're riding. That ferry ride, it takes what it takes, and you're stuck on that ferry. And if it's like an overnight, you get a nice, comfortable place to sleep, as long as you think sleeping on bamboo is comfortable, which I do. But some people don't think sleeping on bamboo mats are comfortable. That's okay. But You can sometimes work. They have Wi-Fi typically on board. Even third world country places are pretty well established for Wi-Fi. The considerations I would say with ferries is have your boat go bag ready, because once you take that trike and you ride it onto the ship, the guy's going to be like, get over here, get over here. You're going to go over there, and he's going to be like, get the hell out of here, get the hell out of here, because typically you're either on first or last. You know, you're not going to be going on amidst all the big semi trucks and stuff that are going to be going on that ferry with you. So if you're on there first, they want you out of there because they're going to bring the big vehicles in and start tying them down to the deck of the ship. And then if you're there last, obviously they want to get underway, and so you're going to have to leave quick. So normally I have my trike set in a way that I have a go bag enough for me to enjoy the 1 day or 4 hours it's going to take for that ferry ride. And that includes, you know, some toiletries, my laptop if I want to, a hard drive, some music and whatnot. Ferries, depending on the size, like this one, you'll have a restaurant. You'll have a KTV sometimes where people can do karaoke. You'll have some stores with very, very overpriced stuff. They have you trapped on a ship and nowhere to go. So make sure also you have some water and some food with you, unless you want to spend it on the ship. But
what about money?
It depends on if it's an international ferry. Sometimes they have like multiple forms of currency, and so you can use all sorts of different things. Oftentimes today, as long as you have plastic, you're pretty good. And the ships are obviously connected to the mainland, so they can take that. And I think even recently I was able to use my phone to pay for things. So you just, use that. So I really enjoy taking ferry rides. They break up the monotony of a long trip. And also it's an interesting introduction to a new area, especially if you're going on an international. It's like a reset. So you're leaving China, you get on the ferry, and then you're arriving to Korea, and then you're leaving the ferry and you're somewhere new. Logistics, I guess, could encompass money too, right? So that's a big problem people might think about when they're traveling internationally. Remember, if you're taking a ferry and you're going internationally, they're not like a ferry terminal is a lot less set up than a airport terminal. So for example, this ferry took me from China to Korea, and when I arrived in Incheon, which Incheon is like the major airport's called Incheon, but the ferry terminal here was a lot different than the airport in Seoul, And so for example, I wanted a SIM card. And when the ferry comes into the terminal, it came in at a really odd time because the ferries will arrive really early. Sometimes they arrive really late. And most of the services at the ferry terminal were totally closed. So it was my first country I'd ever been outside of China too. So I was really nervous. How was I going to connect? How was I going to get money? How was I going to do this? And so I went to Incheon and I exited the terminal. I was on my trike and I was ready to buy all these things and they weren't available to me. And so I got scared and I got nervous and I was like, well, I better start. So I rode into the city. I had to knock on a bunch of doors. In Korea, the phone service, like travel cards, are pretty localized to the airport terminals or the ferry terminals if they're open. So you want to make sure either you can pre-buy some online, which if you can do anything online before you travel, it's always the best, right? You're always buying visas, for example, getting your visa set. And we'll talk about visas too, because that's an important thing as well. But a quick story, or maybe not quick, but funny. I went to Korea and I couldn't get my SIM card. So I couldn't contact anybody. My wife was in China and I wanted to let her know I arrived. I couldn't do that. And so I started riding around and I started knocking on doors for cellular phone service and SIM cards. And each one in Korean and English translation, which was rough. I was telling them, I need the phone. And they're like, what's your address? That was the problem. I didn't have an address in Korea to tie my phone to. And so, no, we don't have that. And then I went to 3 phone service places, and then finally I went to one phone place. He's like, I can't help you, but follow me. And so we're walking down the streets of this small village outside of Seoul, and we go down this like alleyway, and there's this little place, and this guy comes out with like full-on suspenders, like coveralls, and he walks out. He's got a big belly, and he kind of comes out. He reminded me of, anybody seen Big Trouble in Little China? Remember the guy who was like really, the Asian guy who had like this really funny look to him? He was like a really short character, and he helped. Anyways, it just reminded me of him. And he goes, and his whole little room was a total disaster. Papers everywhere. I couldn't have organized, I didn't know where anything was, but he knew where everything was. He walks over to this file cabinet, he pulls it open, and when he pulled it open, like paper like flipped out of the file cabinet, like none of it was in straight, it was all over. And he's pulling through, and he opens this thing, and he pulls out, it was a SIM card from Thailand. We were in Korea, mind you. It was a SIM card from Thailand that allowed service in Korea. I mean, the odds of this guy having that card for me was ungodly. I ended up using that SIM card to travel through Korea, Japan, Taiwan. It worked in Vietnam. It didn't work in Cambodia, but it worked in Laos and Thailand. It was the card that I ended up using for most of my travels. But so you'll always get fun little moments like that that'll help you out. But I brought up something interesting that I didn't necessarily talk so much about. Visas. Okay, so if you want to travel to certain countries, as an American, we have the ability to probably travel to most countries without, we have more ability to travel to more countries without needing a visa because America is a pretty powerful country with regards to international travel regulations. But if you want to travel to China, for example, you'll need a visa. If you want to travel to different countries, you'll need a visa. A visa, for those of you that don't know, is a document that is approved by the government that you're traveling into, the country's government that you're traveling into, that says you're allowed to travel here. China is probably one of the stiffest regulatory countries with regards to granting visas, although they've gotten a lot easier. They even can give out 10-year visas, which allow you to travel into China for periods of time across a period of 10 years. So it's not like a 10-year visa, you can go to China and stay for 10 years. It's a 10-year validity, and you can go to China for 30 days, 60 days, 180 days. Countries like Vietnam have a visa on arrival system, so when you get to Vietnam at the airport, you have to go to the government kiosk, and you got to get it stamped, and they check your documents. Always check visa regulations before you travel. Obviously, if you're going to travel internationally, you can do it. It's not the end of the world, but it can be a stressful situation because it's an added thing that you might not be used to. I mean, back in my day, I lived in Detroit. You could drive to Canada. All you needed to do your driver's license. Now at least you need like some sort of a passport, right? You need a passport to go to Canada now. But most countries aren't as favorable as driving from America to Canada or from the United States to Canada. But if you do travel to a country that needs a visa, do your research and spend a little bit of extra money, especially if it's your first time traveling internationally, to have a service help you. So for example, China has a whole bunch of services available. You pay them an extra $50. You mail them your passport, which can be unnerving, mailing somebody your passport. But most of these places, you look them up and make sure they're reviewed reputably, and then you FedEx them your passport. They will take your passport along with everybody else that they are providing their passports for, or providing visas, and it'll go to the visa office and they'll go through. Now I've been doing this enough to where I can go to the visa office myself and go to the embassy and get visas for certain places, but using a visa service for a place that's a little bit stressful as far as getting your visa can be very helpful to use a service like that. But yeah, I married a girl in China, so that sometimes helps. So if you want to marry somebody, then sometimes you can get some marriage visas, which are pretty good. Just make sure you like who you're marrying. But yeah, so visas allow you to travel. Make sure that you don't overstay your visa. Plan your trip according to the visa time. If, like most people, probably not going to stay more than 30 days in a country, you know, if you're doing some sort of a tour. But if you are, make sure that you have that validity. Some places only allow for 2 weeks. Some places only allow for like 2 weeks in their location. Some places, like China, also has a VOA system for transit visas. So you have 72 hours before you could go to China right now, and you don't need a visa for 72 hours because you're going and then you're leaving. So it's kind of a nice option. You could fly into maybe Chengdu or something, and you could ride around Chengdu for a day or two, and then make sure that you're on the plane out of there, and then you don't even have to worry about visas. Sometimes there's loopholes like that which allow you to get to a place that would ordinarily be a little bit difficult, but you can kind of get a little purview of the place. Anyways, visas out of the way. If anybody has any questions about visas, let me know. Also, ChatGPT. Again, what is the visa? How much and how do I get a visa for Brunei? And then you can ask that through ChatGPT, and they can help you find sources for that as well. So I use ChatGPT for a lot of the stuff that I was looking in for today's talk, and it was very, very helpful. Okay, so air, sea, trains. Who here has traveled with their ride on a train? You? Have you? Have you? But not a trike, bike. In Europe, there's a lot of train cars that are dedicated specifically to bikes. Let's see here. Yeah, so sometimes you'll find, train cars like this. Be careful because a bike and a trike are regarded differently. I was in Japan, and Japan has a high-speed rail called the Shinkansen. The Shinkansen is amazing. I mean, these trains travel like 350 kilometers an hour, and maybe more now, I think. And they allow you to stand on the train station. Like, you can almost stand like 6 inches away from the train platform. And when this train goes by, everybody been to an F1 rally, like seen an F1 car? It goes past you like super fast. Well, these trains, and these trains are 10 or 15 cars long, they're really, really long. And they'll go, and then they'll be there and gone. It is a wild, and they push the air out of the way, so you feel them like reverberating like into your body. Anyways, if you don't have time and you want to travel quick from the southern part of Japan to the northern part of Japan, the Shinkansen is the best way to do it. Now, I went to this train station with this trike. No, that one was a Scorpion. I went there with the Scorpion, and I pulled it on. I had a bunch of people tell me it was okay, and I rolled it on, and I'm sitting along the train area, waiting for the train to come, and all of a sudden, one little Japanese man comes up, and then another little Japanese man comes up, and they're in their official train security garb, and they're like making calls, and they're sending pictures, and they're like, this guy doesn't look right. And it didn't work out for me. They kicked me off the train station. They're like, no, I do not know. This one won't work. So make sure that's okay. Because the Shinkansen actually had train cars like that on the Shinkansen, but I guess the doors weren't wide enough to fit the tires of the trike through. And so you just have to make sure. But in Europe, I think that the train cars there have ultra wide doors, some of them, and you can put it on the train and then travel. Obviously, you could box up your trike just like I told you before for air travel, and then you can slide that on the cargo area of most trains. But make sure you check if they have cycling cars, if they have any size restrictions, and if you have time to box up your trike, you can do that. But also know, when you're going to a train, there's a lot of turnstiles. There's a lot of things that you have to get through. There's a lot of stairs. Like train stations have stairs that go up, over rails. Like, so example, there's a rail here. They'll have you go up and over it to get to the next rail section. And, you know, if you're hauling a big box that might have that, as well as a couple of other things, it can be logistically a little scary. So just do your research before. And you know what? If you need a train to get from point A to point B, why don't you just ride? You know, it might take a little longer, but you can ride. You could also get your buddies to help you. Like, I've had a lot of friends that have helped me get from A to B. You know, logistically, that's a source. I'm a YouTuber, so I got friends in all parts of the world, which is really nice. You know, I had a friend named James who had a truck that helped me get across the Fukushima radiation zone. So the wave that ended up knocking out the Fukushima power station and dumped radiation everywhere. That section of Fukushima is still fairly radiated. As a matter of fact, it's kind of weird. When you drive into Fukushima, they have like stoplights above the highway, but they're not stoplights. They have little readouts that show the rads, that show the radiation level. And you know, I think the highest I rode under was like 3.2 something or other, and that was like having an X-ray, you know, so basically you're riding through there. And it's not so bad if you're riding through there and you're just going from one point to one point, but if you're cycling through there and you're there for an extended period of time, it's like X-ray, 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 and by the time you leave, you could have accumulated quite a bit. So he helped me to get from point A to point B. Don't be afraid to try to call in a favor. There's a lot of like websites, so you can go on Facebook. Logistically, if you're going into Fukushima or you're going to a destination, you can go on that Facebook page for that city, and you post a picture of you and your ride and say, it's a good way to meet friends as well. Say, I'm trying to get to this place. Does anybody have any advice? Don't be worried about asking for help. Oftentimes asking for help is a way that you're going to meet the most interesting people on an entire trip, you know. When you stay closed in, you often, you know, you won't meet the people that you might meet if you're just a little open, you know. But another funny story, another funny story about that Fukushima. So we rode into Fukushima. We had this big white van that coincidentally looked like the vans for the service people that were cleaning up the waste at the Fukushima plant. And so we bought some hazmat suits for fun. Yeah, because that's what you do. And so we had like masks and hazmat suits, and we're driving, and the trike was in the back. And he's like, my friend James was like, I don't know if it'll work, but maybe. Because there was all these security guards with specific gates that would open to allow you into the neighborhoods that had been irradiated, because normal people weren't allowed in there. So we pulled up to one just to try it. What's the worst they could say is turn around, right? So we pulled up to it and rolled down the window, and I pulled my mask off, and he was like, oh, this guy's a Westerner. He must be like an engineer or something, you know, like, and they're like, open the gate. And so we ended up going into the Fukushima irradiated zone, and we got to see, like, we went to like a typical neighborhood. Like, we're talking like $500,000 homes with the furniture completely the way it was the day of the accident. And because what happened is the alarms went off for the wave, and then the alarms went off for the radiation, and they said, leave, you know. And Japan ended up trying to make it right with the people that had to leave their homes, but they left their homes. Like, they didn't get to go back because, you know, they were irradiated. So we even went to a cemetery, and all of the headstones, like in Japan, cemeteries are often kept very pristine by the people who are the family of the deceased. Like, they go there and they make sure they're very nice. And so to see a new tombstone in disarray is kind of a rarity because the family takes care of it. And they were all like, one was cracked all the way through because the earthquake had created the wave, which created the Fukushima disaster. And, you know, so this crack went right through. It was very odd to see like such a cemetery with like that. We ended up going to the area where they took all the irradiated dirt, and they were like, because they got nowhere to put the dirt. They just basically dig holes, put the dirt in, and then bury the dirt, the irradiated dirt over. And so we were driving through this whole area in our hazmat suits and thinking we were getting some like cool insight into some weird place. But anyways, go ahead.
Do you glow in the dark when the lights turn off?
I did that before, so I just glow a little more. Yeah, I travel. I didn't travel all over the. My plan is, you know, like if you look at my map, my original plan. Everywhere where there's these dots here are places that I've been. This is Mount Everest. I climbed Everest. This was a driving tour. All of this is cycling. So I cycled all of this on the trike. At this point in time, there was the pandemic. So the pandemic sort of screwed up my schedule, but I was on my way to Australia. And then at that point, I was going to go all the way to Europe and then down to Africa and then across and then up to the United States. Huh? I was living in China for 15 years. And my goal was business. Like I really wanted to do an import-export business. Like that was what I wanted to do. Until I met some guys who traveled, and then they sort of, hey Matt, come along with me. We're going here, we're going there. And I started traveling with them, and I'm like, this is a lot more fun than sitting at a desk, you know? So I started like planning out a way that I might be able to sustainably travel around the world, you know? And then I wanted to do it on something unique. And my friend, he's like, Tadpole Tricycle. And I was like, what the hell is that thing, you know? AZUB helped me with the trike, yeah. HP helped me out with the Scorpion back in the day. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I've got 1,700 videos of my travels. Every single one of these dots has a video attached to it. So like, for example, let's see, that one, Kathmandu, Everest, flying there, you know, so every single one of these dots, if you're interested in seeing, oh yeah, okay, here's a logistical thing. So when I was in Ha Long Bay here in Vietnam, I took a ferry, and don't put your phone on your table and turn around, because when you look back, it might magically disappear. Because third world countries, you know, you got to be careful that all your stuff stays on you, you know. What kind of road conditions? To be honest, most Asia, the places that you think would be bad were pretty good. So like Indonesia, or not Indonesia, Thailand, for example, those roads were so flat, like blacktop. It looked like it was laid yesterday. They don't have like the ice, and so they don't have the salt, and then they don't have like the crazy weather. It's pretty predictable. And those were good. In China was probably some of the worst roads, but today, that was like a decade ago, those roads were under construction, you know what I mean? So I had areas that were so muddy and rocky that my wheels would sink in like this, and it was just a slog getting through them. Laos. Oh, the car accident? Yeah. I was hit by a car in China. I was hit by more than a car. It was like a big truck, and that was between Shenzhen and Guilin. In this area right here, I got hit by a truck, and destroyed my first trike and kind of put me off the road for a while. But I'm still here. Yeah, I mean, I have the van now. If you've seen the white van that's parked outside, so yeah, my plan is to take that van with the trike on the back and start at Alaska and work my way all down Argentina with it. And instead of like a continuous cycling tour, it will be ride to an interesting place. Anybody wants to ride with me, you know, and if you're along, we can go somewhere and we can ride together. And then I'll put the trike back on the van, I'll go to the next place and I'll ride. And it'll just be a little bit of a different type of tour than I originally had, but very interesting in its own way, you know. But yeah, to finish, I've ridden, like, some of the more difficult rides were more just because of the steepness of them, you know what I mean? So like Korea had some areas that were like 25 degrees, and then I was in Thailand, there were some islands, you know, where the islands are just, if you wanted to get across the island, you had to go to the top of the island and then down to the bottom of the island. And so there's a lot of kickbacks and things like this, but gravel roads, Laos, Laos had a lot of like crazy dirt where it was just dust kicked up everywhere. A bus would drive by and like, it'd be dusty. You'd have to wear a balaclava, you know, so that you wouldn't get anything in your face, but yeah. Huh? I like traveling solo. I've tried to travel with people, and in the beginning you really like them. And then at the end, you don't really like them anymore, you know? And I like to like people, you know? So, but no. I mean, I've traveled with a bunch of people. I've had a lot of fun where they come and then they join the tour and then they go off and they do their thing and then you do your thing. I think that's the best way, personally.
What about navigation? How do you decide where you just get on the road and,
Okay, that's interesting.
take a right there?
Let's see if it still exists. Let's see, map out. This was one of my favorite sources for how I planned my tours. So this is Map Out, and Map Out is, when I got it, it was an Apple only, but you download all the map data onto your phone, so it's completely offline. And oftentimes when I wasn't able to get connected, that was like the best tool. And you can use your finger, and you sort of use your finger to draw from point A to point B, and as you're using your finger to draw it, it'll snap to roads and trails along the way, and you can just kind of like do that, and then you finish it, you save it, and then you can edit it and say, I want to go off this way, or I want to go off this way at the last minute, and so you can like edit a tour that way. Google Earth or Google Maps is like the best if you can like get data, but Map Out was my planning tool, and the other thing that it did is it shows you the elevation changes and things like that very, very easily. Now, a lot of programs do it nowadays, you know. Back 10 years ago, that was like the only one that was doing it. And I think that they're still great. I still use them for that purpose. But, you know, I actually mapped out my whole map from the Ja Yoe map. Most of these paths were the GPT paths that were created using Map Out. And then so I just snapped them to roads that existed. And I mean, yeah, like these ones were riding along the river, so I knew that this river here was here, and so I would just kind of drag my finger along and find the roads that worked out enough. Obviously, you also got to pay attention to the roads and the places that you're going and making sure that, you know, in China, different highways had different letters. So there was like G roads and S roads. And then, you know, S roads would be like interprovincial, and then G roads were like larger. And like obviously you couldn't ride on a G road because those were normally elevated highways, which, you know, I did get stuck. Like, because sometimes roads will merge together and like it'll be one lower road and then suddenly you'll be merged together with like I found myself on an elevated highway, which is like I-94, you know, or like, you know, like I was I-75, like suddenly on a Trike, and I'm like, how the hell do I get off this thing? Because you couldn't turn around, you know? I'm like, oh, my heart was racing, you know? But typically, yeah, so I use that. Google is good for like, before you're at the hotel you're starting, you can use that destination and you can figure out what roads are going, and then you use Map Out to kind of play around and then make some adjustments with that. Anybody else have questions? Okay. So, okay, all right, so you're riding and you're getting to a border. I've crossed lots of different borders, and borders can be nerve-wracking, especially when you're cycling across them. My border crossing from like China into Vietnam, which was, let's see here, right here, Mong Khai. So the Vietnam side was Mong Khai, and the Chinese side was, what was the name of that? It was around Nanning, but this was a sort of a nerve-wracking thing to cross borders with your trike, because like if you have your bicycle, sometimes you can walk through the kiosk areas, like through the border crossing, you can have your bike with you, but the trike I couldn't. And so I had to tell the border patrol people to take my trike, and while I was waiting in line, I had to let the border patrol people walk my trike across the border, which was nerve-wracking. Typically, you have a border crossing where Like for example, if this table is like no man's land, you have the China customs area here, and then you have the Vietnam custom area here. And then in between, it's like this weird, like a no-go zone. You're transmitting from one place to the other like a citizen of nowhere at that point in time. And so you'll have to go out of the exit customs area in China, then you'll have to walk across, sometimes it's just a bridge, because a lot of times there's water. Like for example here, this water is what divides China from Vietnam. So you walk over, you can see this is the dividing line between China, and so you'll have to cross this river here. And so you have to rely on the help of the border. Make sure that you have everything off of your trike that you need to get through the border control, because if you're not going to be able to leave the border control kiosk and go back to your trike. Oftentimes, you'll see the border guy walking with your trike, pushing it over the border, and you're not crossed yet. So you're like, I hope this border crossing goes well, because if they don't let me out, you know, your trike is in another country, you know what I mean? So make sure that you have all your stuff together, make sure you have all your documents filled out as much as possible. Typically, I'll get the trike, put it somewhere where I can visually see it, walk into the border control center, and then you get all the documents, take them out, sit next to your trike, fill them all out, then get your passport and your backpack and everything that you need, talk to the officials, and then find out how you're gonna get your trike across, and then you go ahead and cross through. Because once you enter that customs area and you exit, you won't be able to go back into the country. You can't like go back to your trike, go back into the Vietnam side or China side and pull your trike back, which is why you need some help. But it's not impossible, and don't fear it. Oftentimes, I really was afraid of border crossings just because I didn't know, you know, and which is why I'm talking to you now, you know. Once you do it a couple of times, you get like, all of these things start to dispel. And if I can tell you that now, then you won't worry about it as much when you do it your first time, because, you know, I already did it for you, you know, a bunch of times. But they're like Hong Kong has a crazy crossing system. So you're in Shenzhen, China, and you're crossing into Hong Kong. You got to leave China, then you got to enter Hong Kong. But then you talk to most Chinese, and they'll say Hong Kong is part of China, and then you're like, well, why do I have to cross into the border crossing if it's all one thing? And then you have an interesting geopolitical conversation with my Chinese family.
How do you keep from getting lost? Are you getting GPS on there?
Well, back in those days, there was no like real GPS. It was just I tried to see where it was, and you know, and put your trust in strangers. And now that's another thing, logistically wise. Don't worry about putting your trust in strangers. Most people in this world, most of them, are pretty good people. You know, I've gotten help from people all over this world, and most of them I couldn't help but trust, and it always paid off pretty well. There was only one time I felt endangered, and that was because I had put myself in that situation. I left Phnom Penh in Cambodia, the capital city of Cambodia. It was very hot, so it was like by 1 o'clock it was like 100 degrees more and like 100% humidity because it was the tropics. And so I tried to leave at like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I left the hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning in one of the busiest cities in a third world country. And I was hunted down by a couple of kids that were probably trying to steal, and hopefully not more, but from me. And I ended up playing cat and mouse, trying to get away from them in the alleyways of Cambodian streets. And it was pretty unnerving, but ended up working out okay. I think I'll talk about that more tomorrow as I talk about, like, tomorrow's, we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about, benefits, pitfalls, and stories of international travel. So the next one's going to be more story time, which is, this one turned out to be more story time, so whatever. It'll be more of the story time, but we'll talk about benefits of international travel, things that you're going to see that you won't be able to see in America, and some of the worries that you might have to go through. I'll expand a little bit more about me getting almost robbed, but it wasn't a lot of that. Most of it's positive stuff. There's not a lot of bad stuff, a lot of good stuff. But yeah, we're almost finished. But does anybody have any questions? Logistically, anything?
With the increasing popularity of e-assist, can you take batteries on a plane?
No, not that I know of.
So what would one do
Well, if you wanted to, his question was if you wanted to take a e-trike or an e-bike on a trip, a long trip. Well, I don't know. You could call your dealer and see if they have a distributor in the place that you're going to, and maybe you can rent a battery from them. You know, you could also, I would try to look as much as possible getting a battery from the place that you're going to do the trip that you want, and then returning it to that, and then going, you know, because sometimes people rent trikes for travels. Like I know in Thailand, there was a couple of trike guys that were doing trike tours, and they had some e-trikes, and maybe you can get one for your tour, because it is legit, like basically it's a bomb, you know, in a plane, and it's a safety issue for carrying those high density batteries inside the body of the plane, because the pressure of the plane and all of that stuff can mess with that and can ignite that. There are some people that I have been told have been flying with batteries, so I don't know if there was like a special box you could put it in, but don't quote me on that. You know, it's just something I heard. But yeah, that's going to be a factor that you're going to have to deal with. So I never had to worry about that because I was always pedal power. But yeah, if you're bringing batteries, that's certainly a consideration that you're going to have to think about. Anybody else? Wrap it up? Okay. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And see you tomorrow.